Happy Sunday, Smite fans, and also happy Mother's Day as a friendly reminder. You're watching the North American SCC. My name is Dolson. Aggro is here with me. And Aggro, we finally get another look at this Herculean Hoofs team. A stacked roster that just hasn't been able to perform at their expected level just yet.
Not quite yet, though. They finally found the win column last week, so they're sitting at 1-3 right now. Got to start to get that momentum going. I mean, obviously this team is far too talented to be where they are in the standings currently, but when you look at the NASCC, the top end is pretty separated right now. It's Sturdy Artisans and the Tiburones at 5-0 and 4-1 respectively, and then a bit of a traffic jam after that. They want to get to that top two, which is what's so important in the SCC. They really, realistically, can't drop another set.
That's right, and they go up against the Fishies here today in the same exact spot as the Herculean Hooves are the Fishies. That's Chronic, Kirmi, Nehu, Oceans, Renjaru. All 2-0s this week, except for 1-2-1 earlier on in the North American SCC. So let's start off in this matchup with the Fishies. A roster that, again, is pretty riddled with talent. You know, maybe if you're comparing apples to apples, you expect more maybe out of this Herculean Hoofs team. But you definitely expect better than a 1-3 from a team with Chronic, Kirmi, Nehu, Oceans, Renjaru. These are guys who have played competitively at this level for a little while.
Yeah, they have a lot of experience at this level, and these guys are talented for sure. But, I mean, you're right. When you're looking at SPL-level talent, all-time SPL-level talent, in some cases for guys like Baskin and Mask and Snoopy, those guys have been around that level for so long. I just think that you have to make a difference with your teamwork. That's got to be what you do. And for me, the guy that usually stands out on this team is Kirmi. I think that he's really impressed me a lot of times with his jungle play. Mask is still one of the best players in the entire game at pushing a lead when he gets it. But if you can put Mask on the back foot, maybe Kirmi can end up making some plays.
Yeah, I think Nehu out of the mid lane as well has started to play a little bit more consistently. Getting him onto a pick that he's comfortable with is going to be ever so important here today, especially going up against Baskin there in the mid lane. Yeah. So let's start to pivot our conversation here, Aggro. Herculean Hooves, what is it, do you think, that held this team back, and do they have a chance at bouncing up into that top two?
They definitely have a chance, for sure, but they're going to need some help in order to do so. The best thing that they can do is just help themselves by actually playing to the level that we know that they're capable of. I mean, you say Baskin's name in the mid lane, but he hasn't been that absolutely dominating force that we've seen from him in the past. This team just, they're kind of still caught in that web of, well, we'll just sit around and wait and we'll just out-team fight them later. You know, our experience will come to fruition and we can use it there. And that just really hasn't been the case. Teams at this level have become too solid, too consistent, and too good at making those comebacks or holding on to the leads whenever they get them. So that's the big thing, I think, is the Herculean Hooves need to play a little bit more active early on in the map. They can't just assume that the game's going to be easy once it gets to objective time.
Yeah, this is some of the most competitive SCC play we've seen here in recent years. Snoopy as well, starting to up his game a little bit, I think, out of the ADC role here for this team. You expect big things from Snoopy here today?
Of course, yeah. Snoopy is the guy who's headlining the NASCC Hunters, and that is a deep class when you're talking about what those guys are going to be capable of. I mean, you look across the board, basically every single Hunter in the NASCC has had really, really great moments. Snoopy has got to continue to put pressure on those youngins in order to keep that title of best Hunter in the NASCC, but he's been looking pretty consistent. I think of the problems for the Hoofs, Snoopy probably not number one.
Agreed. The duo lane for this Hoofs team looks great. Gino as well. I mean, he's risen to kind of the forefront, I think, of that support conversation as well. You give him the Sobek, seems like nobody on your team is safe throughout this given game. It's so interesting, I think, especially for the Fishies now. You're going to be in a spot where you kind of got to decide how you strategize picks and bans-wise against this Herculean Hooves team, Aggro. I mean, there's so much talent. I don't know if you really can strategize specifically against one player. I mean, at this point, maybe you're just taking off the picks that affect your team more wholeheartedly rather than, well, we got to take this from Snoopy, this from Baskin, this from Gino. I mean, it's more the tier list. These guys can destroy our team type bans.
Yeah, I mean, once upon a time, you couldn't give Gino Ganesh. Teams were top banning it against this squad a couple years ago. He's certainly expanded the God pool since then, but I agree. I think that you kind of have to look more so at what is good and what these players are good at, because you know that they're going to be going for some of those picks, and it seems like the Fishies are doing that right away. Giannis and Thoth, the first two bans, they're looking at Baskin in that mid lane immediately.
Yeah, who am I kidding? Of course you can specifically ban out against Baskin, I guess. His Thoth and his Giannis, both incredible. And again, to be clear, I mean, those are the two types of picks that Baskin incredibly good at, but also in the hands of any good player can make your team pay maybe a little bit more often than others. Guan Yu, Set, and Tiamat taken off the table. And Aggro, it seems like we finally approached that territory where Tiamat has shown still worthy to be in that ban column. We were confused there for a little while. I think, 0 for 3, 0 for 4, something like that in the Tiamat debut at the SPL level. Now maybe we're starting to realize again, damage number's just too high. If that play style is right on the Tiamat, it can change around those team fights, change around the game.
It doesn't seem to be a automatic first pick and do well with it sort of God. You have to have a player who's tuned in and very, very comfortable on it. But for those players, guys like Hurwind and Shinto and Paul and Venenu, yeah, they make that goddess look really, really good still. So I'm not surprised to see it banned here by the Hoofs.
Well, Tsukiyomi is maybe worthy of a first pick here. At least the Fishies seem to think so. And then Ymir as well. Ymir has been in the first support ban category in the SPL here for a little while. I think kind of along a similar vein. You get the right player with the right play style for this pick. It can absolutely dominate not only the duo lane, but the rest of the game. Wall placement's good, freezes are good, the lock-off potential of this Ymir pick is so strong. And Aggro, the Fishies got Ymir and a couple great picks to flank him here in the first three.
Yeah, but Baskin, despite getting banned twice, two of his gods, the Giannis and the Thoth, still gets to go to the Scylla, which is a signature pick for him, more so than the Giannis for sure, right there with the Thoth. I'm a little surprised that the Fishies didn't prioritize it. If you're going to spend two bans on Baskin, I think that the Scylla either should be one of them, or you should be picking it very early, and the Fishies haven't gone for their mid laner, so it could have been an option for them. Plus, they lose a little bit of that flexibility of the Tsukiyomi, particularly in the SCC. We've seen a lot of players take that Suki into the solo lane. You could have bluffed that a little bit if you hadn't gone for this Wukong in this spot, but you're not going to hear me complaining that much about a player getting Wukong. He's just good right now, and he's been dominating in that solo lane.
He sure is. Plenty of damage, plenty of tankiness, plenty of survivability. Kind of does it all now at the moment. Osiris locked in. Have seen some Osiris jungle, so leaving some of that flexibility to your point there, Aggro, up to this final pick here for the Hoofs. Jingwei's going to be the answer to Apollo. So we've talked about Snoopy and Gino, the power that duo lane has. Giving Snoopy Apollo, Gino the Sobek, I think something to be worried about.
I think so too. I mean, this duo lane has a lot of kill potential. They've got great map impact through the mid game because Sobek's going to be everywhere. He always feels like he is. And then Snoopy, of course, with that ultimate. I really thought that Osiris was going to be jungle for Mask. He's played it recently. A lot of different junglers have tried their hand at it and have felt like it's pretty good. But they decide to go the way of the Serket instead. Maybe a little bit more worried about this Wukong and shutting down that healing that he has in the Somersault Cloud. Serket looked pretty good in the times we've seen it recently. Rapio, I think, is the player who played it in the EU SCC. I'm still a little surprised to see it here. I do think that she struggles a little bit up against things like that upgraded shell still, but overall, she's looked better than I've expected recently, so we'll see if Mask can keep that trend going.
And I wondered where Nehu was going to go here. Discordia has been a pretty popular pick for the Fishies mid laner, not picked or banned here in this game, but it's a Merlin to round out the draft now for the Fishies. Do you like the pick? Quick thoughts on the Merlin.
It's just good at getting away from Scylla's instant burst damage. You can never get hit by I'm a Monster when you have Flicker up. It's hard to get hit by Sick'em or Crush when you have Flicker up. Gives them a little bit more safety than something like the Discordia.
Well, Fishies versus Herculean Hooves. Two teams needing a win. Game one starts right now.
That's right, David does, and it's Gore and Myth down here to to bring you through the action. Doug as the eyes and ears. Difficult with all these D names that come through, but Myth, this one's an interesting spot. I didn't expect at the beginning of this year for the Herculean Hoofs to be in, I don't even want to call it a struggle, but definitely not near the bottom of the standings, right? Still plenty of time for them to try and turn it around. And I feel like this is a comp, I mean, Osiris, Serket aside, you look at the bottom three there, that's a scary trio.
Yeah, the mid 3v3 as well as just the bottom three inside of that Pixman's looks incredibly strong. Baskin on Scylla, we've seen what this guy can do on unorthodox mid laners, able to solo carry a ton of games. So I think the moniker is, we're just glad Baskin treats Smite as a hobby instead of pursuing it as a career, or else no one would ever really stand a chance. But I'm excited to see the Hooves, and I think you hit on it just right, Gore. I don't think anyone expected to need the Hooves to turn it around halfway through the season. I think that, for the most part, people were expecting this squad to do what they did in Season 7, which was go largely undefeated, but so far, the SCC has proven just a little bit too difficult.
Well, question in the duo lane of which support is going to be a little more aggressive. Ymir, Sobek, neither known for passive play at this point, but if Gino or Oceans are going to be the one kind of dictating the pace of this. I kind of want to know, like, between Jingwei, Apollo, it looks like Jingwei is going to be the one. A good pluck for some peel there, slows, damage going back and forth. But I guess illustrating the point I wanted to make, which is that I don't know that either of these hunters are more adept than the other at finding a kill in that lane.
No, I think it comes down to the supports there, and then it's going to become a very even matchup once the supports rotate out. Renjaru probably picking the Jingwei just to deal with the Sobek as solo lane dealing with a little bit of trouble.
The fact that Chronic got out, that was first blood for sure a second ago, but I guess his narrow path to safety there for Chronic, showing why Wukong is so potent, right? In bird form, you probably die there, but Ox form, some knockups in there. And all of a sudden, you're back under the tower. Still in a little bit of trouble over here. That blue stone's only going to be able to do so much. Those health bars, or health pots, are only going to be able to do so much for your health bar here. But he seems to be just fine. Masked being pretty proactive. I mean, seeing him get active early on in the jungle, this matchup versus Kirmi, like we've seen Tsukiyomi be a dominant force. We know what to expect out of him. But Serket has been pretty hit or miss. Aggro had even mentioned on the desk as upgraded shells start to come through, which right now it's beads galore for the Fishies, so maybe a little bit later, that's really going to maybe put a strain on Masked and accomplishing what he wants to.
It could. Masked really only needs that one auto attack once he gets his passive fully stacked up, which means that Shell's pretty easy to time up against Serket. But still, you have to deal with the true damage from the ultimate, the burst damage from the abilities. I think that Serket is going to have a home in Season 8 pretty cleanly as Renjaru caught out. Can't quick get into the updraft, but does escape out of that situation. I want to highlight that Meerkat goes for a slightly different start than what we're used to seeing in the EU SCC on Osiris. Normally it's that Warrior's Axe for that additional poke potential, but instead he's going to be a Death Toll abuser. Those AoE autos get a ton of sustain.
Oh, but a good wall from Oceans. It looks like they were trying to get something done. I mean, both the Oceans and Gino are trying to get something done, but I see Tsukiyomi making his way over there to the duo lane, causing a little bit of trouble. A good wall to block off Snoopy here. Looks like he's going to be safe for a little bit. Good peel from Gino. Can they get away? Mass looks to come and join the fray. Neither of the junglers level 5 at this point, so no one has their ult available. They're going to be looking for a little bit of damage. So Mifflin, this one's just going to come out as a moot point.
Yeah, Fishies able to weasel their ways out of there, but a lot of beads expended on both sides here. It seems like Snoopy's forced to use his defensive relic. Renjaru maintains his, but Ocean's not nearly as lucky. Herculean Hooves used its pressure to move into the purple buff. Mass falls low, but does secure the buff, I believe.
Gino as well, both incredibly low. Renjaru's flirting with death right now, but doesn't seem to be too worried about it. Has a nice beefy Ymir right beside him. So they're going to back off. But one pluck, one freeze right now, whether it's a support or a carry. Someone is in a position to die, and it looks like both these teams are going to back off. Kind of rare for North America to make it 4 minutes into a game without first blood. But I think that's kind of an indication of these two teams. First off, a little bit of a gold lead now for the Hoofs, but it kind of showcases, like, we're expecting, I think, more from the Hoofs at this point because of what, I mean, their names really indicate about them, whereas the Fishies are giving them the credence, the time of day. They recognize that this is a team that you can't trifle with, or else they'll just take the lead and run away with it.
But the lack of first blood is not for lack of trying, is it, Gore? We've
Yeah, no,
seen
they
a
won
lot
it.
of gank attempts in solo lane, duo lane already. Maybe 3, 4 ganks, as many ganks as there have been minutes so far this game, but both squads maintaining their lives, maintaining the pace of this match. The only thing separating them is that purple buff invade on the left-hand side. Herculean Hooves getting the better end of that exchange. But for now, I'd say the match is completely even. Keep your eyes on these supports. Gino and Oceans should be pretty indicative of how the pace of the match is going to fold out, depending on how they decide to rotate throughout the map. Seems like already Oceans putting a slight emphasis on the right-hand side, seeing if maybe he can catch out a jungler or a soul laner.
It's always scary. I've already seen some good walls from here. Chronic going to go in here on the Mask. Look for the stun. The lockdown's going to be coming through. The ult from the Tsukuyomi just to get some damage out. Masked finally going to get taken down here for first blood. Kirmi, credit for the kill. But now they have to get out of the jungle alive. With just Meerkat around, Mifflin, I don't think they're that worried about that.
No, Meerkat's not chasing that one out at all. Maybe looks for a little bit of poke as Fire Giant Scorpion being looked at the 5-minute mark, putting Pyromancer on the map. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side, Snoopy uses his own ultimate trying to find some sort of invade. Whether or not Renjaru is able to step in there, doesn't seem like it. 2 versus 1, not a fight he's willing to take. Herculean Hooves doing a pretty good job across the map, despite falling down for first blood.
Now giving that pressure, getting a level up for Kirmi. Feels pretty good. In fact, he's going to go ahead and look over here onto the solo lane once again. Meerkat, the one in danger right now. Not going to be able to find the follow-up on this one as he escapes just narrowly there. But I think showcasing there is not a lot you can do. If you give any amount of pressure over to Tsukuyomi, it's going to be enough for him to start applying it elsewhere.
Yeah, Tsukuyomi's so good at putting his pressure on the map, finding those kills, being that aggressor for your team, especially if he elects to go for that more bruiser-centric build with Shifter's Shield. Can be that initiator, use the Piercing Moonlight just for gap close and then hang out in the team fight a little bit longer, or could shift up that methodology and go for a more assassin-esque build and just play it like an assassin.
And we got to see it, you mentioned it as a gap closer, but we got to see it chase down. Like, Mask is trying to escape in that fight, and it's like, no, I'm going to stick to you like glue, man. There's no way to get out of there, and I think that's something that they're going to have to deal with. I mean, one of the things we've kind of, I want to say poked fun at, but, like, Baskin has got away with a lot of, like, no CC ultimate, no movement, or really big displacement of mages in mid lane, and now he's playing Scylla. He's much safer. But if someone's going to be able to chase you down through all that, I think Kirmi's the guy to be worried about. So I'm wondering a little bit about Baskin's safety here. Of course, he's Scylla, so you can't worry too much about it. If you have enough self-heal, plus Gino beside you from what we've seen out of these Plucks, I don't think he's too worried. But Kirmi's someone that we got to keep our eyes on because he's really trying to dictate this. Nehu, welcome back to the game, man. We're going to go ahead and get you back down to half health.
Yeah, come out of pause and straight into the frying pan. Nehu struggling to find his footing in mid so far, but hasn't really had to deal with aggression. Neither mid laner really had to deal with aggression onto them from the junglers as of yet. Kirmi taking a peek over at Baskin, but not quite willing to step forward. I want to see this Herculean Hooves roster try and force some fights around the soul lane a little bit more consistently. Considering that Chronic goes for the Bluestone, should be easier to just find that poke. Death Toll for Meerkat means that anytime he takes a fight and just survives it, should get value just from the sustain inside the kit, which means that you have a pretty decent opportunity in forcing out Chronic and instituting a lead for your soul laner.
I'm excited to see it. Death Toll Osiris, like, along with Death Toll Bologna, like, in days of yore, like, that was the thing to run. I think even at the beginning of Season 8, like, before Death Toll received some nerfs, that was the thing to run over there in solo, but of course, Bluestone Wukong, much like Season 2, is the one who's left still standing. Gino is potentially looking for Renjara. Look, any other god that he was going for a gank on, I would absolutely believe that there was credit for, but Jingwei's going to escape Sobek 10 times out of 10. It's Nehu who's maybe causing a little more trouble for them. Maybe the Greater Scorpion in the eyes of the Fishies, or maybe just nothing at all. They're going to back off here, just making sure that their purple buff doesn't get stolen away.
A much slower pace than we're used to seeing in the SCC so far. North American SCC, not the SCC as a whole. Gotta at least make that as a point of reference. The North Americans usually like to find some more aggression throughout the early, but it kind of makes sense with the pace and the team compositions that we're looking at. Both squads going to be pretty comfortable waiting till that mid to late game phase. Both of them pretty strong in the late game 5v5, so neither team really has the onus to force aggression throughout the early. Meerkat using the Lord of the Afterlife to escape over the wall. maybe a little bit overzealous with it, maybe a little bit too trigger happy with the ultimate. Doesn't seem like Kiermi has the potential to finish off that kill, but better safe than sorry if you ask me.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the way I would say this game is right now, right? Better safe than sorry. Everybody has been a little more cautious with their engage. The only big one that we've gotten to see was that first blood for Kiermi. They're still playing patiently. And it kind of brings the conversation up. I mean, you had mentioned the Fire Giant Scorpion Forp over there getting burned down incredibly fast. Pyromancer going to spawn up in a little over a minute. Same thing for the Fire Giant, a little over a minute. Gold Fury's still hanging out, not existing right now. Do you think there's time for one of these teams to put some pressure on it? I feel like when you have Scylla on your team, it's almost something you want to do is have a Gold Fury or a big objective spawned on the map.
It would be probably beneficial for the Hooves to look at it a little bit sooner than later, and Gore, as if they are listening in, just hearing your call immediately clears out the Greater Scorpion on the Gold Fury's side. Meerkat in a little bit of trouble here, still doesn't have the ultimate available. Might wish he didn't use it earlier.
Oh, wow, comes up just in
Nice.
time to make sure he has a little bit of gap there, so he's going to be able to save him. Over here in mid, though, it's Nehu who's going to be in a little bit of trouble. Tossed back there by the Circuit. Magino, of all people, going to get credit for the kill. Ocean's just one hit away, but not going to fall. I mean, flirting with death there, and manages to escape. So luckily for him, he walks out. Not so lucky their mid laner goes down.
Yeah, maybe you'd prefer had Oceans died there if you're a Fishies fan. Support surviving in exchange for your mid laner's life, not really the greatest feeling on the planet. But Nehu, in that body bag, does get back to base to finish up the Spear of Desolation as Mast, at legitimately 1/4 HP, aggressively walks down Renjaru to steal away a purple buff. You gotta think that Renjaru should be feeling a little bit more confident there.
Yeah, I mean, safety at this point, you're Jing Wei. That's what she's known for. Either way, it creates exactly the amount of room they need in order to scoop up a Fury. And what was kind of fluctuating, it was, I think, 200 gold for the Hoofs, then 200 gold for the Fishies, has now solidified itself as a pretty consistent lead here for the Hoofs, and they didn't have to expend a whole ton to get there. One kill, a little bit of pressure onto a purple, and now they're going to be not even firmly in the lead, but at least the most control we've seen so far this game.
Yeah, close to 1,500 gold at this point in the lead are the Chaos side team, and the Hooves are a squad that's pretty adept at turning small leads into something bigger. There are still ways to separate the game. Pyromancer is still available. Tier 1 towers could be looking to get pressured pretty soon as well, but the Fishies have yet to give up a fight without at least digging in their heels and finding a defense. They haven't really allowed the Hooves, outside of that one invade on the left-hand side from Mast, to do whatever they want. So I think that the Fishies are in a position where they could still fight in, or even potentially try and sneak away a Pyromancer with their additional burn potential from this Merlin. So keep your eyes on them. They're not quite out yet.
I was just about to ask you that, and I think we're going to have to wait on that conversation. Gino just absolutely isolated here in the jungle, but it looks like he's going to be able to get out safely, at least for a little bit. Kiermi looking for the chase down, looking for the damage. Will eventually find the support. Yeah, there it is to get the kill. But it is going to end up leading them, again, a support, while it saves the rest of the team, there's not really much to follow off of whether or not it's worthwhile. Still a kill, but you lose a tier 1 tower in mid. Maybe the scale's coming out pretty much even on that one. I was going to mention it to you because it's the tale as old as Phase 1 of Season 7, just a year ago. The Scylla and the confirm that you have from her ult versus the burn that you have from Merlin. So Nehu can't confirm it the same way, but that Fire Giant will disappear fast. Same thing for the Pyromancer. If the Fishies decide to point over there, do you think that's going to come into play a lot, or do you think because Baskin's on Scylla, there's not really a big shot for them to sneak those objectives out?
There is the potential for them to try and make a decision. Okay, the Hooves are on Pyromancer. Let's head over to the Gold Fury. Or, hey, they're on the Gold Fury. Maybe we can do Fire Giant with our burn potential. But it is a little bit risky because of, as you already highlighted, the out-confirm that Baskin brings with the I'm a Monster ultimate, or even the global presence from Snoopy should be able to rotate in and stop these sneak-away attempts pretty easily from the Fishies, or at least dissuade them for trying it out. I think that it could come up. Whether or not it should or will, I don't think it likely will. We're in the North American SCC. These guys don't like playing the map for neutral objectives. Instead, a lot more emphasis on finding kills.
Chronic stunned out, slowed down, gonna stay alive there. Doesn't stop the pressure from happening pretty much everywhere else on the map. Masked is looking for blood. Every single member of the Fishies has beads up, but is that going to help them out here? Kirmi forced to use his ult to try and get some CC immunity. Is it gonna be enough to save him? Baskin up in the Ammo Monster, gonna slam the damage down into Oceans, and Oceans is not walking out of that one. Gino once again confirmed the kill at 2-1. Can Renjaru stay alive? Jingwei adept at that one, so she's not going to be in too much trouble. Chronic is a completely different story. Caught out by 3 and burned down, and the Herculean Hooves pick up 2.
We are 13 minutes into this game, right, Gore? There's no way the Herculean Hooves are just 5-man grouping walking down the Fishies' back camp, so that's exactly what happens this time around, and it results in a 2-for-0 and Pyromancer in favor of the Chaos team. What was just a 1,000 gold lead quickly elevates itself into 3,000. I expect the Hooves to keep this pressure up. Gold Fury spawning in a little bit over a minute. You should very well expect them to be there on cooldown in numbers and try and force a fight onto the Fishies. Fishies have a hard decision to make. Do we want to step up to the Gold Fury, try and find a defense there, or maybe do we utilize Renjaru's ability to go back to base and be a semi-global with that passive to split push a little bit? I think, if anything, I want to see the Fishies put up a defense, but they got to group up harder, man. These disjointed, 3 people here, 1 person there fights are not going to work for them if the Hooves are going to keep playing as this tight-knit 5-man death ball.
I mean, it's a dangerous game to be playing. They might be looking for a little bit of blood there. Snoopy feels some pain, but not too much overall. Like you said, with this amount of a lead, it's not the end-all be-all, but it is something scary. I was actually going to ask you if this is something, do you even bother risking a kind of play where you leave up an Oni Fury and go try to burn a fire time while the other team's on it? Maybe we'll answer that here as Gino is in a little bit of trouble. 3-4 HP, maybe it's 60% to be more accurate. Snoopy incredibly low in the back, but it looks like he's going to be able to walk away and get some healing off of these minions. What felt like it was going to be a big swing for the Fishies gives them a little bit of pressure, but not a lot of wiggle room.
A little bit of pressure can turn into big plays, though. Meerkat on the other side able to catch out Chronic on the rotation, but the Fishies do confirm themselves. The Oracles, that vision advantage, going to be so important for defending this Oni Fury or aggressing onto it if they so choose instead. With the gold deficit as it is, cannot fault the Fishies for being a little bit trepidatious moving in towards the Gold Fury as Oceans. Oh my god, falls down! That's all Baskin.
I mean, just like it's nothing. Baskin gets the damage. Now Snoopy looking to come crashing down into the middle of the fight, but it's Chronic instead who's able to turn around the kill. Kirmi being able to fall finally, but they're losing so much on the back end. It's a double kill here for Chronic, 2 for 2. And you lose your jungler, but it's a support in that trade for a solo and a carry. Feels like the Hoofs, again, aggressive and stripping away what they can afterwards, still don't quite come out as far ahead as I think they wanted to.
Maybe a slight overcommitment there, going a little bit deeper than they should have, are the Hooves. So the Fishies do get the 2-for-2 trade and maintain the gold for the neutral objective. The Hooves still pretty healthy with their 3 core, could potentially look towards it, but instead going to clear out the jungle, get a little red buff invade as well, and just pull that lead forward in that sense. But it feels like the Fishies still have some fight in them, Gore. They feel like they've got this decent identity of counter-engage. Chronic's been going into the backline trying to disrupt, to buy time for Oceans to regroup with his own backline and find that peel. It's a strategy that can work out and will only get better as Chronic gets some more defense items under his belt as well. If he's a little bit tankier, can buy a little bit more time and potentially get into the Somersault Cloud next time. I think that the Fishies are still firmly in this game.
Leone Fury has the Herculean Hooves eye caught, and it looks like that one's going to get burned down before anybody can reply. Ocean's looking for a wall. Not going to be able to engage on that one, or at least not choosing to engage on that one as they back off here. And it just goes to show, I mean, the conversation we were having earlier where, like you said, Fishies, not out of this game, has a lot of fight in them. But when it comes to these objectives, it just seems difficult, even though they have superior burn, to try and confirm anything that comes after. Now Renjaru looks to be isolated. Kirmi's going to be hanging out over here as well, but that's not going to stop the Hooves. They want to go in there looking for lockdown. Kirmi about half health, a little lower, thanks to Gino. Doesn't look like they're going to find anything more. In fact, it's Oceans, as well as Nehu on the reply, looking to come over. One good wall can block him off. Gets Gino, but not quite Snoopy. Snoopy up into the skies, but Gino burned down before he can reply. Baskin's in the waters, or lurking in the jungle. It looks like they're just going to go ahead and call this one quits. I wonder where Snoopy's off to.
Yeah, Snoopy's maybe headed to mid for some push, or at
Just
least to
hanging
steal
out.
away some farm. Just either like, oh, look, there's too many enemies in my lane. I gotta go somewhere where I don't have to deal with 3 people. But that does leave the Fishies open to strip away a tier 1 tower. Baskin, having to have his mid-wave stolen, looks for the defense. It does so much damage.
I mean, you wish, right? But the Aegis just so well timed. Basket throws out everything there. Manjaro just laughs it off. Oceans gets to walk forward. I will say, a small price to pay for Baskin, an ultimate as well as all of his setup just to get an Aegis and save a tier 2. I'd say it's pretty worthwhile for him, as well as confirming his own buffs. But unfortunate, I mean, that would have been a guaranteed kill had it been just slightly mistimed there for Manjaro.
Yeah, getting the Aegis though, you're not feeling too bad about it. Jingwei now a little bit less safe, and that is the operative word, less safe. Jingwei incredibly safe with the CC immunity on the ultimate, the airstrike for displacement, as well as maintaining the beads. So Renjaru still certainly can get aggressive inside these fights and not have to worry about it too much. But the Hooves have had complete control of neutral objectives throughout the entirety of this match. Have the Fishies legitimately tried to put up a defense around any of these Gold Furies or any of these Scorpions, Pyromancers? They're all just going the way of the Chaos team, and it's got them a 4,000 gold lead. The Fishies, I said they're still in it, and they still have the potential to fight, but they're only exercising that potential in lanes. We need to see them group up and play the macro game a little bit better.
Well, the same call you wanted a few minutes ago. Finally seeing if they can make it work here. Kiri, the one who's caught out, but he's going to go for his ultimate, using that Aegis and his beads, all of that, to walk away alive. Same thing for Gino. One hit away from death, but it seems like he's going to be able to walk out of this one. Baskin's looking for a little bit of blood onto Chronic. But ultimately, it seems like the Fishies, even though they want to fight, they want to group, aren't going to be able to find it this time around. 2 ults, a lot of relics used just to get away.
That's so much expended on the side of the Fishies, and it's again because of how they rotated into these fights. There's a 3-man grouping from the Fishies rotating into the right-hand side, and they come face-to-face to 5 members of the Herculean Hooves. Then we see Chronic try and get into the backline, try and play that disruption factor. Drops down low from Baskin. Look, you force 4 people back to base, I think you can go for Fire Giant every single time.
Oh, they're going to start it up. It's sitting a little over half. Oceans is going to be a little bit of trouble, but they're not going to be walking him down enough. In fact, it's Snoopy right now who's been taking a little bit more damage in the back than Chronic. Does not want to lay off. Renjaru goes deep this time around, but the grouping maybe not paying off for him. Finally, someone's going to be able to lock down Snoopy, but it cost them too much to get back there. Renjaru trades out his life for it. Gino going to fall as well here for the Hoofs. So a 2-for-1 trade. The Fishies finally pick up a fight just the way you've been asking for.
Yeah, first time they group up as 5, walking back from base, gets themselves a pretty clean engagement. Oceans isolating it, turning what would have been a 5 versus 5 into a 5 versus 2 for a couple of seconds, and then completely changes the face of that match. Renjaru potentially stepping a little bit too far forward, playing it almost as if he's an assassin, dashing into the backline of the Hooves, but certainly gets his value. Gets the 1v1 up against Snoopy and puts some decent damage into Gino as well, but not a clean enough fight. Losing your ADC means you can't go for the objectives. Fire Giant remains standing.
And all those towers still standing as well. Not a lot. They are going to be able to pick up Oceans. And retaliation here. Chronic walks away. I think just more to the point of what we were saying. When Renjaru's not around, what are you going to push down and how are you going to find that pressure? Seems like the answer is in no way or form, as the Hoofs, they're just going to go right back at it. They just force you to back. They know they just got to kill on the Oceans. He's the one who, as you highlighted, made that fight work out for them. So they're starting up the Fire Giant. Already at 1/3 HP, looking to get burned down. Chronic's in the neighborhood, but can he do anything against it? Not against Ascilla, and not this time around. Makes it onto the Somersault Cloud to stay alive. And the rest of the team do the same. Nehu under, well, a lot of damage at this point, just gets melted. And Chronic finally burned down, and it's 1 by 1. The Fishies, well, they just get pulled right out of water there. Renjaru going to be left alive. Oceans respawning, but with the Fire Giant on the side of the Hoofs, feels like it's not a sure thing, but towards the end.
Yeah, Fire Giant on 5, gold lead in the 7,000 to 8,000 range at this point. The Herculean Hooves still have 3-4 towers on the map to collect gold from, but I think Phoenix more likely going to be the target. Mast playing that split push role because he's low HP, going to utilize Fire Giant to resustain, and the Fishies think better of it. Even with only 4 people there, the 2 members cannot step up to defend.
Oh, wow. They're just running it down into the Titan room. I didn't think they were going to go for this. There's still 3 towers standing, but it doesn't matter to them. They're going to kill off Ocean's
Okay, yeah,
Renjaru. The Titans, just another checkbox on that list. From 0 to 100, incredibly fast there for the Hoofs. 23 minutes in, after the way the first few minutes went, seemed like it was going to be for the long haul, but the Hoofs just decided to, like you said, control neutral objectives and win every single fight. The one grouping from the Fishies that worked out for them was just too far and few in between.
Yeah, but, you know, the Hooves, or the Fishies, rather, do get a good look of how they can adjust their game plan into Game 2.
Yeah.
That 5-man grouping from 4,000 gold down kind of worked out for them. So what happens if you match the grouping of the Hooves before you have the gold deficit? I think that's one place they can look to just improve their macro game a little bit. But for now, got to congratulate the winners, the Herculean Hooves, looking so dominant here.
I liked how Oceans looked on that Ymir, just to highlight the Fishies one last time, but like you said, it was just nothing but good on the side of the Hoofs. And that was with 2 bans targeting out Baskin. We'll have to figure out whether or not they're going to go that route again, or what adjustments the Fishies will make, at least in picks and bans, and then, of course, in game number 2, right after this.
It seemed like only a matter of time there in game number 1 before the Herculean Hoofs would take over. It was a good performance, though, by the Fishies in all regards. They had a pretty good counter-engage, the ability to back off, get back in those fights, make things a lot closer than maybe they seemed on paper. But after that FG, things just kind of spiraled out of control there, and the Herculean Hoofs take game 1.
It's exactly what an experienced team like the Hoofs are going to do to you, Dave. They're going to take little advantages one after another, and then all of a sudden they blow the game wide open, and it feels really difficult to come back from there. It just felt like the Fishies never really got any momentum. I mean, they get first blood onto Mask, and after that, there's not a whole lot to write home about. It was just the Hoofs walking where they wanted to walk without a whole lot of extra counter-engaged. I mean, this is 13 minutes in, and the Hoofs are deep in the enemy jungle without a significant lead at all. That's just where they felt like being at the time. And when that starts happening, you start losing those engagements and using that Apollo ultimate to its full effectiveness. It's difficult to come back and be competitive if the enemy team is going to snowball as effectively as the Hoofs did.
Yeah, I think the scoreboard right here in this clip is pretty indicative of the state of the game. It was tied in kills, but about 5,000 gold in the hole were the Fishies. So, you know, you end the game with 3-4 kills in the lead, 4 after Baskin, 5 maybe after Baskin gets his chain I'm a monster off there. By the end of it, 407 is what Baskin ends up. And that's why we were so confused isn't the right word, maybe intrigued. We were trying to figure out some of the draft strategy there from the Fishies. You take away the Giannis, you take away the Thoth, but you leave open the Scylla that Baskin has proven he's just as good at. And that kind of lends itself to the earlier conversation. I don't know how much value there is in these hyper player specific bans between the Thoth and the Giannis. I mean, at the end of the day, Baskin on the Scylla is maybe better than those other 2 picks.
Right. You have to do enough. If you're going to put someone on a specific pick, you've got to come in with a clear plan to beat it. And I don't think the Fishies' composition or whether they played demonstrated to me that they were not only ready for the Scylla, but that they wanted Baskin to pick the Scylla. That was the game plan, was for him to pick the Scylla, and then we were going to beat that by doing X, Y, Z. It was just, we don't really feel like playing against Giannis. We don't really feel like playing against Thoth, so let's get rid of those. And, he took Scylla and kind of owned us with it. I'd expect a Scylla ban in this next game, honestly, if I'm predicting the game 2 P's and B's, because the Fishies, you don't want to go up against that again, I imagine.
I don't know who wants Baskin to pick Scylla, unless it's his teammates or whoever he's playing with in ranked on any given day, I guess. That and more will be answered in P's and B's for game number 2. So, Fishies, remember, Giannis, Thoth were their first 2 bans. Hooves, a little bit more all-encompassing were their bans off the bat, and I think the Athena rounded out the top 3 here for the Fishies. So still in that first pick slot here, Aggro, and with the power of some of these picks, like maybe you're in a world where you leave the Athena open as well as the Tiamat if you feel like those 2 are powerful enough, make the Hoofs choose one or the other, or maybe the Hoofs then can leave something open. There's plenty of draft strategy to be had, but you have these hyper-powerful picks, especially now that Tiamat's off the table. Maybe you force the Hoofs to ban out the Athena if you think that she's that powerful, but instead right back to Giannis and Thoth here for the Fishies.
So this is where the Fishies banned Athena themselves last game.
Yep.
They switch it, and they go with Sobek this time around. So now the Hoofs have to choose between Guan Yu and Athena bans, because they banned Guan from game 1. They decide to go with the Athena. I'd expect a Guan pick here from the Fishies. I think at this level, it's a lot easier to snowball games through healing, because it only takes a few. The margin for error for the enemy team becomes slimmer, knowing that there's a stain on the enemy side. Little surprised they go back to the Tsukiyomi, but knowing how much the Hoofs value that pick, it makes sense. Yeah.
Guan Yu is at a 100% pick ban rate and an 83% win rate through his 6 games played. So feels pretty good here, I think, for the Hoofs to get these 2 picks. And then Apollo for Snoopy. Look, it wasn't a knockdown, drag-out performance from Snoopy there in Game 1. I think he had like 10,000 damage, which was about what Renjaru was able to do as well. But the rotation ability of that Apollo is what we talked about. That extra element shifted the face of that game on so many occasions. I think the Hoofs are probably elated with what they've gotten here. That Scylla is still on the table as well, especially now that the Fishies are going to take Raijin for Nehu there out of the mid lane. Again, it's not a bad top 3 from the Fishies at all. If anything, it's a good top 3 from the Fishies. I just think the Hoofs got everything they wanted and more.
Yeah, the Hoofs go, cool, man. We get an upgrade in solo lane. with the Guan Yu. We're going to have to find something different for Gino because his Sobek got banned, but otherwise, we get to do exactly what we wanted, but probably better with the Guan Yu in comparison to that Osiris. Definitely not enough of an adjustment in my mind from the Fishies, but maybe this Raijin could do a little bit better than what we saw to Nehu and the Merlin.
Yeah, the Merlin just not able to stay safe enough there in that game. A little extra CC immunity maybe from the Raijin helps him out over that finish line. Still needing a Hunter.
Yeah.
The Fishies will get the Heimdall taken away, and then the Ymir on the back end as well. And then Serket, Ratatosker both taken away from Mast. Haven't seen much Loki here today. Remember, the SCC is playing on the patch where Loki is still available to get picked, but we'll see if that is even a conversation piece as the Bacchus gets locked in here for Gino.
Where's the Anhur here, Dave? I mean, Anhur has been the top hunter to pick and ban in the SPL. It was in the EU SCC as well. It's got a great matchup up against Apollo. Apollo really struggles up against Anhur in that matchup, but they decided to go with the Chernobog, and it's telling to me that Chernobog's win rate, 29% with 14 games
a lot of
played.
games.
That is a ton of games. He's picked in 40% of games, and yet he wins less than 30%. Is Dave, a little bit of clairvoyance from you with the Loki there from Mask?
What do we think about the Loki pick here? Look, I mean, it's looked good in the handful of games we got to see him. I imagine when he makes his way back into the competitive pool at the SPL, it'll still be a pretty contested pick. Plenty of damage, plenty of lockdown. It seems like a good pick here to round out the draft.
Agreed. It does leave the Hoofs a little bit light on CC, I would say, in their mid 3v3. I mean, Bacchus has to all-in commit with his if he wants to get some CC set up for Baskin, but Baskin's got to prove to me over the years that he doesn't need that much setup. It seems like they have enough with what they've got. I think the Hoofs have very similar strengths to their composition from last game, and the Fishies have to prove that they can withstand that storm, that they can not make those mistakes now with a healer on the other side in that Guan Yu, which makes it that much more difficult.
Oh, he's proved to us over the years, Baskin has, that the Scylla is capable of doing his own lockdown, but maybe not the Fishies just yet. Game 2, Fishies versus the Hoofs, starts right now.
Well, I'm excited to see these adjustments from the Hoofs more than I am. I think the Fishies definitely taking some notes from game number 1. Rinjaru going over to the Chernobog. Ocean's now on this Cabrakan, but I see a Loki on the other side, and Mifflin, like, he has been one of the most prominent picks that we've gotten to see in the last couple of weeks. And I also get to see a Bacchus, who's just personally one of my favorite supports. I really like Bacchus. I'm really excited to see how the adjustments go for the Fishies this game. And you were really focused on the grouping, the team fights for the Fishies. The fact mainly that they weren't doing it as fast as the Hoofs. But does the 5v5, I guess, kind of blanket for the Fishies here look better this game? Or do you think that they're going to try to pilot some, say, early game aggression to just get a lead earlier?
I think that they do have some more tools to get that early game lead, as you're alluding to. This Cabrakan's going to be incredibly strong, even from level 1 onward if he gets that Tremors. Before people have boots, it's essentially just going to lock people in place. I call it a pseudo-root at that point. But I think that the Fishies have made their biggest adaptation inside that Hunter. I know that Aggro said 40% pick rate, only 30% win rate, which is true, but I think it's going to alleviate some of the issues that the Fishies had in Game 1. They were struggling to have that grouping up. Well, Rinjaru doesn't really have any excuses. He's got a global ultimate that takes him to his enemies, should always be there and ready for a fight.
Yeah, easy to chase down Snoopy when you can literally just wait 2 seconds when Snoopy lands and then follow him over there. So maybe going to be able to call them out, at least get some vision. Maybe a couple of more assists for Rinjaru as well, although I'm not sure that's really the focus for him when it comes down to it. Going to be looking for that traversal across the map. We're already seeing it. Gino, I'm kind of surprised to see this. Cabrakan is kind of who I would have given this lane over to, thinking he'd be a little more aggressive, although it's difficult, I think, for anybody to out-clear an Apollo. But it's Gino, like, jumping in, the belly flop. Bacchus, I would argue his early game, even though it can be potent, is not his most powerful state in the game. So it's surprising and a little refreshing, I guess, to see the Hoofs have this much control, even though they're technically down a little bit as Mask. He's looking for a little bit of damage, but he's not going to be able to find much here in mid. And that's the other threat. I mean, Kirmi was big on this Tsukuyomi last time around, but Mask is now on a Loki. And we've been seeing him find a lot of success.
We have, but Mask is forced to use the beads there as he tries to step forward and find that aggression, so it might be about 2 or so minutes until he tries that one again. Renjaru not nearly as lucky on the left-hand side. Rip, bud. First blood goes the way of Gino.
Yeah, Jingwei maybe gets out of that one, but not a Chernobog this time around. Good kill coming up for them. And again, Gino, look, I'm going to give him a little bit of, not even discredit, I don't know, just poke fun at him for a little bit. He got a lot of kills on Sobek last game. I'm going to start off this game doing the same. We'll see if this box is going to stand true, but he's already making these big rotations. I mean, this is something you had highlighted in Game 1, where it's just Gino loves running across the map. Granted, this is just for mid-camps to get a little experience, but keeping up with Gino seems to be the #1 task for Oceans this game.
It should be. I mean, Gino is a guy who just loves to get involved. The Hooves in general, I think, like to kind of expedite the game. They'll move out of the laning phase a little bit earlier than most of the other teams in the North American SCC. They like to get involved and start working as a team as soon as possible. Maybe barring the solo lane, Meerkat left alone on an island more often than not. But Gino, he likes that 3v3 in mid. He wants to be there. Most supports wait till 4 or 5 levels in. Gino, at level 3, already crossing that threshold.
Oceans is still hanging out over here in the duo lane, not getting that aggressive. Same thing for the solo lane. Last time we were having trouble getting anything out about the duo lane because the solo lane was constantly fighting. Chronic was in a lot of trouble then. It looks like I might have spoken too soon. He's about a 1/3 HP here, but he's under his tower. Meerkat's not going to chase that down. It's going to be the duo lane this time around that's going to be causing a little bit of trouble. Ocean's going for the trimmers, but he's not going to be able to find much off of that one. It's Kirmi who gets the lockdown there onto Snoopy. Finds themselves a kill. Mask manages to skirt out of that one. Same thing for Renjaru. I mean, just barely gets into the wall in time to dodge that damage, but stays alive.
I like that strat from the Fishies. Well, if you're going to get your support out of dual lane, seems like we're going to have the advantage over here. Rotates in numbers to find the fight. Kirmi benefits from the kill, and Gino, because of his early rotation to mid, just not there to help out his team. It was a nice mez from Snoopy to elongate his life off of the piercing moonlight from Kirmi, but it's not quite enough to maintain his own life. But even with, as the match has gone, even with it being 1-1, it feels like the Herculean Hooves are still the ones establishing control and looking for the fights for the most part. Even neutral objectives, by and large, have been going their way.
Well, this amount of control feels comfortable for them. Like you said, the neutral objectives going their way. It leads them to a 250 gold lead, right? A little bit of chump change for them, spread across all 5 members, enough to buy an extra ward or an extra healing pot. But not enough to really run away with anything just yet. But you have to keep your eyes, I guess, on Kirmi. Masked was making a rotation, but didn't necessarily get to have a big impact this time around. It feels like Kirmi is the one who's kind of dictating that. And with the Scorpions coming up pretty soon, that's when we saw a little bit of a grouping. I think that was around first blood for game #1, was on the right-hand side after the Scorpions had spawned. Kirmi, where that pressure goes, looks like he's just going to go for the Scorpion this time. No blood necessary.
Yeah, might as well clear it out. We're getting almost exact same timing as we had in game 1, but this time the Fishies are going to be the ones picking it up instead of the Hooves. Pyromancer spawning up should be a nice neutral objective for the Fishies to force a fight if they so choose, and I think they should so choose. With Masked playing Loki, he's going to need a couple more levels before he's at really an effective state where he can look for those one-shot plays. Chronic, though, getting aggressive over here, maybe a little bit too much so.
Yeah, that's going to be an Intoxicate from Gino. Not sure it was needed, but it sure is going to find the kill and lock them down. Chronic was able to escape too many times last time. They're not going to give him any time of day to allow that to happen here. And it's going to open up the Scorpion on the left-hand side, but Nehu Oceans in the neighborhood. Not going to be enough to thwart Masked completely. Kind of surprised to see this. You can't tell, like, Snoopy's going for this Harpy, whether they want the Scorpion. Seems like this is going to be the full commit. Kirmi's running right on up to it. He's not going to be able to make it in time for the steal. In fact, he's going to be just a little bit late on dropping the Sentry Ward there. Going to get a little credit for killing off what was left. But he's not going to be able to find the objective, so he loses the enhanced buffs.
Enhanced buffs going the way of the Herculean Hooves this time around, and Kirmi, Nehu, and Ocean spring in a trap, seeing if maybe the Hooves will step forward into it, and they do! Gino, the target of the aggression.
Wow, it just melted like it was nothing. Mask comes into this fight a little bit late. Is this where you want to be? Baskin goes for the ult, and Snoopy comes crashing down. That's going to be a 1-for-1 trade, or 2-for-1, as Kirmi gets burned down alongside Ocean's. Gino trading his life for the greater good of the Hooves.
Yeah, I think Kiermi accidentally hits Baskin with one tick of the Piercing Moonlight. He was just trying to hit Gino, but unfortunately teleports himself deep into the tower there. Takes about 3-4 shots, loses his life. Herculean Hooves doing a good job disengaging to maintain their lives. Mask, maybe not so much though.
Ooh, the fadeaway auto there for Basket still gonna work out. That's a little bit of style points. I don't know, like can I tip 50 gold to Baskin specifically for that one? I feel like that's a little solid in terms of the way it looks, but still a good turnaround. I mean, Nehu just burns down Mask in that instance, and after talking about it, like seeing what we've seen Johnny do in the SBL on this Loki, it feels like a good amount of control. As Snoopy now is in a little bit of trouble. Ocean's not having his ult. Isn't going to be able to find the lockdown, but Gino, I don't know if this is the fight you want to go for. An Intoxicate used here to try and lock down Renjaru. And if anything, I'm just going to call that extra peel in this case, because it doesn't seem like it's doing anything other than keeping Snoopy safe.
Yeah, I think if Gino doesn't drop the ult there, maybe he's at risk of them trying to turn the fight around onto him, the Fishies that is. So drops the ult, says, hey, you're kind of hurt, please don't hurt me, I know all my abilities are down now, and the Fishies oblige in that case. But we gotta talk about where the game's gonna go from here, Gore, and I think that the Hooves are starting to reach that point where they like to group up, usually a 4-man grouping. Expect to see Mask playing with Baskin often, or looking for 1v1s in the jungle like this.
Oh, it was a true 1v1. Kiermi still going to get the best of Mask there. Meerkat rotates in, trying to help find the kill. Baskin just annihilates Oceans elsewhere on the map. But Kiermi trying to get away. Meerkat, no ult available, trying to close the gap, trying to get the damage. Will be able to get it just in time thanks to the cooldowns. It looks like he's going to stay alive here. Chronic just going back to Bully, but he does not know Gino lurking in the jungle, coming around for the stun, potentially the knockup. Forces the Somersault Cloud. They're going to force Chronic to run under the tower. Meerkat's close to getting his ult, but I don't know if they're going to aggress under this one too fast. Oh, maybe not.
Man,
He's
if
still
I'm
lurking.
Chronic, I'm so mad, dude. I'm so mad that Gino's been over here twice now, forcing my ult, taking my life, as well as just forcing Meerkat into a position where he can find kills as well. It's a lead for Meerkat, maybe about half a level that he hasn't really gotten on his own. It's been a lot of rotations from the Hooves, and they continue now. Blue buff invade doesn't quite work out, but Chronic could lose his life.
Oh, yeah. Trying to get out of this one alive. A couple of autos from Gino. Bacchus doesn't hit as hard as you'd like. You're not a boxer this time around. Meerkat locked, isolated, and alone. Oceans and Kiermi going to be able to find that kill, and now it's important to lock down Chronic. He's just going to run into the tower. At this point, yeah, no one's touched him for a little while. That goes credit to the map, of all things. The flower with the kill. So I guess ultimately worthwhile for the Fishies. I mean, they kill off Meerkat pretty easily, and Gino's not able to find anything in return.
Worthwhile for the Fishies, but still not quite out of the fire. 2,000 gold lead in favor of the Chaos team. Both neutral objectives going to be spawning very soon. Strange blink from Gino there. Maybe thought someone was stepping up on the side of the Fishies, but unfortunately no one was, so just interesting relic usage overall. Pyromancer just now spawning. Gold Fury available, and I think the Herculean Hooves would be doing themselves a favor if they grouped up on one of them.
Well, Mask's been dancing around the map trying to figure out where to go, where to get this pressure. Tried that 1v1 earlier with Kiermi. Didn't necessarily go well. Had to have some backup. Still lost his life. So the pressure on the map is kind of alleviated. Last game it felt like the Hooves were a lot more in, not even just in control, but at least when it came to neutral objectives, they were in charge of dictating when they would happen. Here, even with Baskin, a really good confirmable ult for those objectives, with Mask falling just a little bit behind, I guess actually technically ahead here, looking down at the levels, he's still 11 to the 10 that Kiermi's picked up. It's going to be interesting to see where he puts his pressure and if that's going to help out on these neutral objectives. Whereas Gino's just been anywhere and everywhere. I think this man has traveled the entire map. There's nowhere that feels off limits to him, and even now, he's helping fight off Kiermi.
Yeah, inside Kiermi's own red buff, by the way. Gino has zero regard for the map state. Instead, just going to go wherever he wants. Jumping forward, not quite able to find Nehu, but not the same can be said of Oceans.
Ocean's just eviscerated here by Baskin. Finds the ult necessary, uses the second hit to confirm that red buff. That's the kind of kill you need to confirm a Gold Fury, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Those walls, a monument to the failure there. As Oceans ends up getting taken down. I guess a monument to the success here for the Hoofs as they turn it into a nice Fury. Pretty good controlled lead. Those neutral objectives starting to fall their way. Now Nehu He's going to have to use that Thunder Crash to get out of there. And the ult to use the CC immunity. Good timing on that to dodge the knockup. It's not enough. Meerkat Baskin, Wombo combo, lock that one down. Nowhere is safe if you're a fish.
Yeah, unfortunate Nehu, you didn't play it poorly there. Jumped back into his tower and tried his best to run away. Just did not have the numbers of teammates to get himself out of there. Baskin, now being aggressed upon, left high and dry, is able to make it back into his tower, and Kirmi not willing to use the Piercing Moonlight to chase out that kill.
Snoopy says, what's up? Kirmi is one hit away, but that last auto not quite going to be able to connect it. Kirmi not going to go in with his ultimate, so he's safe for now. Snoopy gets a little bit of healing, but now Ocean's maybe a little too aggressive. Chronic on the Somersault Cloud, forced to retreat here, watching his teammate fall down. Kirmi gets out alive, but it does come at a cost. Fishies still lose another kill. And it looks like the Hoofs aren't going to be able to turn that into much. Not rushing the fire or the Pyromancer. They're just going to hold on to what they have.
Yeah, a lot of these guys on the Hoofs still haven't backed and spent the gold from the Gold Fury, man. That's, what, 2 team fights won and a Gold Fury picked up. Keep your eyes on the builds, in particular Baskin, I think, is going to finish up some pretty important items next time he makes it back to base. I expect the Herculean Hooves to keep this base score. They should be going to the Pyromancer, going to the Fire Giant in a couple of minutes as well, or even grouping up and looking at these Tier 1 towers, because the Fishies so far are looking to have the same issue that they had in Game 1. It hasn't been a true 5-man grouping from them, and they've been suffering for it.
Well, you had mentioned it. Hydra's there, just picked up for Mask. The full Rod to Hootie locked in for Baskin. Some big power spikes for 2 important members. I mean, Baskin's already been having an impact on this one. I think Mask, specifically when Hydrus comes online, we've been seeing this a lot with Loki, is going to start hitting a lot harder. Gino's setup, I mean, it's just been very clean for the Herculean Hoofs here. It's now just a question of, I want to say when the Fishies are able to find a good fight back. They had one last game where it seemed like it could be the turnaround, but here I just haven't felt the grip on the game for them. I mean, where do they start to fight back? Is it just the team fights? Is it the grouping again? Or is there something going wrong elsewhere?
It's been a grouping issue, but the fights that the Fishies have won have been 1v1, so Mask maybe looking for Kirmi in the jungle, loses out on that engagement, but now is a time that you would probably want the Fishies here in numbers. 5 people need to rotate over, but Chronic has got a vendetta with Gino. This guy hates him every single time Gino locks eyes with this dude, jumps on him, looks for the stun, tries to set something up. Chronic is having a very hard time moving forward.
Chronic wasn't there at the beginning of the game when they said it's on site. Ocean's right now on site, eviscerated again. Baskin with the lockdown. The ult's going to be able to confirm that one. Kirmi looking to get the lockdown. Nehu getting chased out. Snoopy crashing down under the tier 2. Looks to get the mid laner, but they lost Mask and Gino in the process. 2 for 2. It looks like Renjaru, same thing for Kirmi, could look for more. Baskin's isolated and alone. Do they have the lockdown for it? In fact, Baskin's the one looking for a fight, tries to turn it around, and it's going to be Chronic caught out in the jungle. The Fishies still turning tail and running, even though the trade goes even. It looks like they're not going to be able to get anything out of this, but they do stop the Hoofs from turning around too much.
They do, but the Hooves seem like they're willing to do just about anything on the map. Even just there, we saw Baskin stepping up to the Tier 1 tower, now controlling the neutral camp. Snoopy rotating back over to Solar Duo. He's going to be able to at least try and make an attempt for a split push, especially considering Renjaru already used that ultimate to rotate into that fight. You were asking earlier how the Fishies get back into this game. It's by grouping up and separating the team fight of the Herculean Hooves. Works out for them there, a 2-for-2 engagement. As long as they have all 5 members, they're going to have the potential to fight in, but already they're deciding to a little bit too late in the game. 15 minutes in, 4,000, nearly 5,000 gold lead for the Herculean Hooves. Got to think that the Fishies would have been much happier had they just decided to group up a little bit earlier on.
I'll put mine, well, a name in that hat, or ring as well, I guess. I don't know what analogy I'm going for. Kill Baskin. That's what I'm trying to get at here at the end of the day. It's just, there's another avenue that could get you there. 5-0-3 right now. Seems like you get rid of the Scylla, maybe you alleviate some of the pressure and the damage, really, that's coming out. Gino's going to be looking for a stun here. With him and Snoopy versus Kirmi Renjara, I don't know. This one seems like it could go even. You glance away for a minute on anyone on the Hoofs, though, and somebody else has taken too much. Nehu looking like he's forced back to base. A TKO, so the Hoofs can get aggressive. Primal Fury about to come up, so it does open the avenue for them to scoop that one up pretty easily into their belt. And then we can start that Fire Giant conversation very simply right after.
And just look at the coordination from the Chaos team. You know, Primal Fury spawning, alright, well, we're already here, all 5 of us, in numbers, whereas the Fishies only have a 4-man grouping with Nehu kind of wandering in.
Oh, they get aggressive. It's going to be the Intoxicate drop by Gino. Good
confirm
kill. Hoofs get the Primal
Okay.
Fury in the middle of all that one. Seemed like it was a toss-up. Could have gone either way. And they just grab it and run. A good way to get in, get out. 2 ults used. And that's all they need to make sure, again, the next Fire Giant's going to be a little bit easier for them. But the Fishies, again, a grouping, the good fight. Seems like it's going to be great, but Renjaru isolated up against the wall. Might have to come out, but I don't know where you go after this one. Locked down with the Mez. Good knock-up here from Gino, and with Mast in the neighborhood, it looks like it's going to be 1 kill guaranteed. Renjaru goes down. Kirmi just a few hits away, half health, trying to stay alive. Maybe turning around for that auto wasn't enough. That tower is not going to save your life this time around. Loki comes in. Loki does not make it out of there. Kirmi able to turn 1 around, but it's 2 for 1, still in favor of the Hoofs.
Yeah, if I saw that right, it looked like Kirmi waited to use the disarm until Mass went into that stealth state so that it forces out the beads. Mass trades out his life and his defensive relic just to set up for his team. But I'm sure the Hooves are still just fine with the pace that we're looking at right now, approaching a 6,000 gold lead, and the Hooves approaching the Fire Giant as well. Nehu may have stepped a little bit too far forward, got a global ultimate coming his way.
Wow, I mean, just trying to shoot blind there for Baskin. Goes into the ult, gives him some movement speed. We'll give him the credit for that one. Nehu trying to stay alive. Anything at this point. I mean, Aegis is still alive, or around, but he uses it. Doesn't make a big difference for him. Beads, ult, all of it down. And even though it felt like they were starting to find some groupings, or at least some turnarounds there for the Fishies, it's these isolated picks that the Hoofs are finding that's just driving them up against the wall.
It really is, and now immediately towards the Fire Giant. 1 pick is all it takes, and they start to step forward, burning a little bit slower than I think they'd like, but keep your eyes on Renjaru. Has the ultimate available, could rotate in if he so decides, but so far, not willing.
The aggression is there. Intoxicate even dropped down here. Chronic onto the Somersault Cloud. Kirmi looking to go in for some damage. There's an Aegis. I don't know if this is going to be enough. You're now in a bad spot. 4 members of the Hoofs looking at the jungler, and they're going to be able to find it soon. Maybe not. No, Kirmi looks to get some peel from Oceans. Is walking out of this one alive as of right now. Renjaru just split pushing at the time being. Kirmi finally goes down, and guess what? There goes Oceans. Here goes Chronic. Nehu just respawning, and well, hey, Renjaru got the half of the Tier 2 tower.
Should be able to finish off the other half, hopefully. I mean, it's a calculated decision from him. I want this Tier 2 tower. They can have the team fight and the Fire Giant. And the Hoofs, you know, not the worst trade deal in history for them. I think they're absolutely fine with it going that way. Fire Giant going to be on 5 members of the Chaos team, as well as a 6,000 gold lead as well. The Fishies able to pick up a Tier 2 tower to close it up slightly, even. I mean slightly. It is still about 7,000 off the back of the Pyromancer. Herculean Hooves could do no wrong at this point, and there's 5 towers left to collect gold from. I think this gold lead's going to balloon out pretty out of control.
And you're still 7,000 gold down, and there's 5 towers left on your side of the board. That's going to escalate pretty quickly into the 10k plus mark. I mean, technically, look, I'll give him credit. Renjaru gets the first exposed Phoenix this game. He's able to accomplish that part, but is it going to be enough? If these team fights go their way, if they start grouping as 5, we've been talking about it, they do still have good potential to turn it around. And I'd actually argue, as much as we're talking about the gold lead that the Hoofs are going to soon amass, that Tier 1 tower just now falling to minions over there and left, I do think there's something to be noted about a 5v5 grouping under a Phoenix. I mean, if the Fishies play this appropriately, that exposed Phoenix actually could turn things around for them.
Yeah, it could be a win condition if they're able to take a fight cleanly. And look, Gore, I'm thinking about it a lot. I'm thinking critically. If the Fishies don't want Renjaru to rotate over, because there is an argument to be made that if he does ult in, he doesn't really amount to much. You can't turn around the team fight in a 4v5 anyway. Then you got to imagine that the Fishies should just not be stepping forward there. If Renjaru's not willing to make the rotation, I think they just give up the Fire Giant instead. It would have been better than losing out on 4 lives and the Fire Giant. I think I'd much rather just give up the objective.
We'll see how they can handle it here under this Phoenix. This is where I think their fight needs to be impeccable for the Fishies. And so far, they've got a lot of good damage down, but that Phoenix is under half health. Meerkat's walking out alive. Same thing for Gino, but not happily. Snoopy looking to get locked down. Chronic going to get the last hit onto that one. That's going to be 1 confirmed kill for them. Again, it's something small, but it's enough. Renjaru goes in onto Meerkat over here in the mid lane, though. Some good damage. It doesn't seem like it's going to be enough of a lockdown. They Get that kill, maybe feeling themselves a little too much. You have to take it slow. That Phoenix is still exposed, and they still have Fire Giant on the other side. Gold Fury spawning. It looks like the Hoofs are going to get isolated to just a neutral objective, but that's not going to slow them down, Mifflin. They want to continue going for a fight. Kirmi, I don't know what you're doing. You left the base, and you left your safe space. Now locked down, masked, in trouble as well. It looks like they're going to be able to walk out of this one alive, happily. Baskin going for shots over the wall. The damage from the Hoofs is just too much, and they're isolating the Fishies like it's nothing.
Yeah, just an interesting decision for the Fishies to continue to step forward here. Flop not quite on the mark. Gino now isolated in the back. Could lose his life if the damage output is there. Meerkat forced to go in for the peel.
Is it going to be too much for them? No, it looks like he's going to be just alive. Gino finally taken down, masked incredibly low. One more shot from Nehu confirms the kill. Did the Hoofs overstay their welcome? Basket says no. He gets himself a double on the back of this one. Now it's a 2v2. Meerkat incredibly low. Snoopy crashing down to change the numbers in favor of them. A triple kill picked up there for Baskin. A nice scoop for Snoopy as well. And while it might not be the end of the game, it may be able to turn at least a Phoenix in their favor. Meerkat's low, Baskin's low, and Kirmi looks like someone who has something to say about it.
Yeah, Kirmi going to be alone for the next 30 seconds as well. Could continually look to put out poke on a Meerkat to stop this push from happening, but easier said than done, man. One auto attack from Snoopy drops him down to 70%.
Well, they're able to get some damage, turn around. Kirmi's going down no matter what, but they have 10 seconds left before anybody else is respawning. It's going to take the time to destroy this Phoenix. None of the Fire Giant buffs that matter are really still around. I guess Meerkat has that sustained. Baskin getting a little bit of pin there, but it's going to take a little long there for Snoopy to help burn down the Phoenix. They get one at the end of the day, though, Mifflin. A good fight for them, although hectic that it was. And now they can turn their eyes to the Gold Fury.
I just think the Fishies would have been better served by not leaving their Phoenix there. Mass able to find that one shot, does trade out his own life. But at the end of the day, the Fishies could have maintained the base. Instead, step forward, do get a couple kills, but lose a Phoenix all the same. As well as the Gold Fury. Herculean Hooves came into this Fire Giant siege with about a 6,000-7,000 gold lead. Now, closer to 13,000, 14,000 gold lead, nearly doubling it off of that team fight and objective push. And there's still towers left standing on the side of the Fishies. With Fire Giant buff wearing off and spawning in the next 30 or so seconds, we might see the Hooves just set up there, or they could even potentially look for this tier 2 beforehand. The Fishies, I think, have to make a hard decision. Do we want to look for the defense again? Hard to say. That last one didn't go too well.
So I'd mentioned trying to kill Baskin at 5-0-3, and no one asked, but it's 9-0-8 now, so 5 more assists. 4 more kills picked up for the mid laners. In the last, what, 12-ish minutes, I feel like that's when that was. So he's been able to double the length of the game, almost double his KDA. Now they're looking for even more. The fight's going to be the engagement. Separated right now are the Fishies. Nehu isolated in the backline. It's going to be Gino Meerkat locking that one down. But it's Oceans who's trying to engage elsewhere. But you engage on the wrong target. Snoopy and Baskin are just going to take down your health bar. Chronic turns back one, but it's not enough to be able to win this fight for them. All 5 members down for the Fishies. Phoenix with fire minions already going forward. This is a game win for the Hoofs and a set win for them as well.
The Fishies, man, have got a legitimate allergy to grouping up as 5, man. They hate it. It was a 3-man grouping for the Fishies walking straight into the Fire Giant pit, by the way. What are you doing over there? If you're not going to group up in numbers, you at least want to push up the mid waves first. Herculean Hooves able to dismantle a disjointed team fight from the Order side team, and they make it look easy. Combined timer of the set, still less than 1 hour. Both games ending before the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, good for the Herculean Hooves. I mean, we were kind of talking about the fact that I think last week we started to see them turn around and we're looking better, but this is the trajectory I want this team to be on, right? Not just, hey, we're winning these sets, but convincingly winning these sets, and I need to see them do it for a few more weeks even at that to start giving them the credit. That was very well played. I mean, Baskin, I don't know if he died in Game 1. I know he didn't die in Game 2, so his KDA is going to be off the charts for this one. I'll have to break that one down, see how he did. The damage numbers as well that I'm interested in seeing right after this.
let's give Basket and Scylla in back-to-back games. Does that sound good to you, Aggro? Is that a good strategy? Yeah.
Yeah,
thumbs
as
up?
long
Well,
as
look,
oh, okay, yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, sure.
Somehow in game 2, it looks better than it did in game 1. He ends what, like 10-0 and something else in the double digits there for Baskin? Yeah, it's a roll of the dice, and we came up empty-handed here for the Fishies.
Look, it's one thing if Baskin's just going off on you, and that's what Baskin does to really good players all the time. But the thing that I think has us scratching our heads is the double mage bans that aren't Scylla. That then leave you in a position where you're not going to be able to handle the mage that he does end up picking. But I said at the very beginning of the pregame desk today that Baskin hasn't looked like that dominant Baskin that he used to be all the time. This is what he looked like all the time, and this is the best possible sign for the Herculean Hooves. If Baskin can start playing like this with any sort of consistency, they are going to rise up the ranks very, very quickly.
He missed his Sikkim there in that last highlight. So that's why you give Baskin give him the Scylla, because every once in a while he'll miss a Sikkim or something. It feels like the I'm a Monsters though we're not missing nearly 25,000 damage in this game, 16 KDA out of the mid lane, and that is with 0 deaths, 11-0-10. Feels good if you're Baskin. And you got to give props, right? I think you worded it very well yesterday. When the back line is popping off, and Snoopy had a great game, 5-2-11, you have to then give some props to the front line as well, because they're making all that space. Meerkat on the Guan Yu. We were surprised that the Guan Yu was left through. Remember, it was Tsukuyomi first pick here for the Fishies that left Guan Yu over there to Meerkat. 5 and some change, 1,000 healing, certainly looks good. And so, Baskin, yes, the pop-off performer, MVP of this game, probably this set, but it also looks like the rest of the Hooves aggro starting to rise to the occasion.
And that's exactly what this is the version of the team that we expected to see from day one. Now it's just taken them a little bit. We're 5 weeks in now, and finally they're starting to look like their old selves, but a little worried that it might be too little too late for this team. They have to run the table from here and get some help in order to get into the top 2. They need some teams to take some games off the Tiburones, and not just games, but overall sets, assuming that the Sturdy Artisans are going to stay where they are up at the top.
Yeah, not many people, actually only one team has been able to beat the Tiburones, and that is the Sturdy Artisans up to this point so far. So it's going to be a tough hill to climb. You'd rather all of the chips be in your hands, or all the cards rather be in your hands if you're the Herculean Hoofs, but requiring some other players or other teams rather to play their cards in order to get the Hoofs into a contested position. Here are your updated standings after this completed week of the North American SCC. Sturdy Artisans still undefeated up top. Tiburones fell to the Sturdy Artisans earlier this week. And then the Herculean Hoofs start to make their way up the table. 2-0. All the European sets here this week. The expected teams between Accounting Department, Elysium, and Snake Hunters beating the expected, I don't want to say losers, but those games win as expected, I think, is the way that you start to look at it here. And then a couple 2-0s down in the North American SCC. I want to see now the run back of the Sturdy Artisans versus this Herculean Hoofs team. I think that suddenly gets very interesting.
I think so too, and it should be coming up fairly soon. I think if the schedule gets mirrored back, I believe they played near the very front of the season, so that should be coming up soon. I'm excited to see that. If you guys if anyone in the chat missed that Tiburones Sturdy Artisans Game 3, that was one of the wildest endings to a game I've ever seen. So definitely recommend checking the VOD for that one.
That's right. That was pure chaos. I'm rewinding me back to Thursday. Here's your schedule for next week in the SCC. Thursday, we'll have a couple EU matches and then one North American match. Average Joe's versus Tiburones will be the NA match. And then we'll sprinkle the rest of the games before the SPO throughout the rest of the weekend. So some good ones to look forward to. Herculean Hooves get a matchup against the Winter Dogs. Sturdy Artisans going up against the Fishies. So unless the Fishies have this massive turnaround, if you're kind of keeping this ball in the Herculean Hoofs court, it's going to require a win there, maybe some good chances, because all three of those teams starting to play against the teams in the lower half of the table here. That's it for the SCC. This fine Sunday of Smite action will continue. It's, 12:22 Eastern time right now, 38 minutes or so, the SPL will kick off. So stick around, SPL, starting 1 p.m. Eastern time.